Good evening and welcome to the latest installment of the Oro Sports Show brought to you by First Health Orthopedics. As usual, we've got the three amigos here tonight. We've got a lot more room on the desk, although we filled it up with a lot more stuff. But here in the middle, we got Jeremy McKenzie as always, and on the other end, Russell Parker. So you guys have a good week?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know who else had a good week? Villanova. And as we know now, they are the national champions for the second time in 3 years. And it didn't dawn on me the night that it happened, but this is actually back-to-back championships for the city of Philadelphia. If you think about it,
They just won.
Oh, yeah.
So just won
and
the Super Bowl.
then, and then a lot of people don't realize that Villanova is also located in the city of Philadelphia. So good time to be a Philadelphia fan.
Is anybody surprised that Villanova won it, though?
No,
This-
not at all. I'm not at all
The
surprised.
city of brotherly love.
And, we're going to get into all that here in just a minute. But just to recap what happened over the weekend with the Final Four, number 3 Michigan defeated Loyola Chicago 69-57. Of course, that was the highest seed that was left, ended the road for the Ramblers finally. Mo Wagner led the Wolverines with 24 points. One of the biggest, I thought, upsets, just because it was such a big win, was Nova beating Kansas 95-79 on the other side of the bracket. That really surprised me.
Yeah, it did.
That Nova was able to handle the Jayhawks like that. Nova actually shot 55% overall field goal percentage and 45% from the three-point line. So it doesn't matter who you're playing. That's tough to beat when you got numbers that high. And, of course, as we know from this past Monday, Villanova beat Michigan 79-62. Michigan kind of kept it close there in the first half, but then in the second half, Villanova just ran away with it. Dante DiVincenzo, off the bench, led the Wildcats with 31 points. The Wildcats led the Wolverines in rebounding 38-27, which that along with the three-point shooting obviously was the big difference. Now, I mentioned that this is the second Villanova championship in the last 3 years. Of course, just 2 years ago, they beat the Tar Heels on a buzzer beater. So here's my question to you guys to jump it off here. Is Villanova a dynasty now?
I'm not gonna say a dynasty at this moment. I consider them a elite team that can also could be in contention every year to win a championship because of what the guys they have in place. And the Dante DiVincenzo, who came off the bench with 31 points, that's very unheard of for a guy who you really don't hear too much. Hear a guy coming off the bench scoring 31 points and lead his team to a national championship win. But I think with the narrative when we're looking at Villanova is I could see them down the road can be a dynasty.
Yeah.
If they win 2 or 3 more
If they
championships.
put a couple more together?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think, Russ? I mean, is this the beginning of something big?
I think it might be. Villanova certainly got a great program, and as we've seen this past season, that they can show that they can get into it, and then they just flatten everybody that was in their path. They obviously had the easiest route to the Final Four, but I say they had the easiest route in the entire tournament.
They did.
So I think it's the start of a dynasty. I don't think it's there now. I don't think they've cemented it yet. But give it 2 more. I say if they win 2 more championships within like 5 years, something like that, then they would be considered that for sure.
Well, you mentioned that I think all of us picked Villanova having the easiest route to get to the Final Four.
Even Richmond County, I think, had like an 89%.
Yeah, and we were all right on that. Myself, for a change, I was right on it. But I also had Michigan State running them out. There was, a lot of people that said Kansas was going to be able to beat them. Duke could have eventually had to play them. Purdue, there were a few teams that could have gave them some competition. Like you said, they just ran right through them. Didn't matter who it was. And, of course, they didn't have to face Michigan State or Duke. But nonetheless, here's a quick little stat. Since the end of UCLA's dynasties back in the mid-1970s, only 3 other schools have won 2 national championships in as short a span of this, the last being Florida's back-to-back in 06 and 07. I think that because there is such a quick turnover in college basketball now, especially with the one-and-dones, I think winning 2 out of 3 is a dynasty because you just don't see it that often. Duke won back-to-back national championships in the early 1990s with Grant Hill and Christian Laettner and all those guys. And, again, I just mentioned Florida. But since then, nobody's really done it. I mean, Carolina's won a couple since then, but they were separated by 4 or 5 years. Duke being the same thing. Now, Jay Wright, the Nova's head coach. I was going to ask you guys the question. Is he a Hall of Fame coach? And I'll give you some stats here in just a minute. But do you think he's up there with the Mike Krzyzewskis and the Roy Williams?
I would say so, yeah.
I consider him in the top 10 right at this moment. And I can see him being a Hall of Famer someday.
Now, he's been at Villanova since 2001.
Ooh.
I didn't realize he'd been there that long, and I don't think a lot of people did either. His record alone at Nova is 420 and 165. That's a 718 winning percentage in 17 years. That's pretty solid, especially coming from a what you call a small school like Villanova. They used to be known as a mid-major when they first started up. Now you can consider them one of the big boys, kind of like Gonzaga. When they first made their run, they were a small mid-major. Now, you can pencil them in for the tournament every year. Now, overall, Jay Wright is 542 and 250. He's 25 and 13 alone in NCAA tournaments. So you think about how many games that is. That's, 38 games that he's coached in the NCAA tournament alone. Now, obviously, you end up playing, what is it? You have to get 5 games in a row, I think, to win a national championship. And obviously, he's been able to do that twice. So that's 10 wins right there. He's got 3 Final Fours under his name, 2009, of course, 2016, and then, of course, this year. He's been the Big East regular season champ 5 times, 2006, and then 2014 through 2017, and probably would have had another one this year if it weren't for Xavier, which is why I picked Xavier to win it all before we started this, simply for that reason. But they also won the Big East tournament this year, and in 2017 and in 2015. So I don't know personally if I would put Jay Wright on the same level as Coach K and as Roy, but I would have him in that second tier right underneath it with guys like Bill Self from Kansas, Jim Boeheim from Syracuse, guys like that. Now, the team that they beat, Michigan Wolverines, where do they go from here? I mean, do you think they've got another run in them like this next year?
I don't think so. I think they're not going to make it. I don't think they'll even make it to the Elite 8 next year. But they did impress me in the tournament with getting as far as they did. So I think they're going to use that as momentum to build off of for next year and keep it going. I don't think they have anything to hang their heads on because they lost to Villanova, who has flattened everybody else before them. So I don't think they got nothing to really worry about too much.
Yeah, what do you think? I mean, is this it for them for a run for a while?
For at least a couple of years, I think they need to get time to really need to go back to the drawing board, see what they did wrong, what not have you, and pretty much what they need, better recruitment, what not have you. And I think as time progresses, I can see Michigan getting back to where they need to be. But I see if I had to make a prediction for Michigan for next year, I can see them going to the Sweet 16 and be gone.
I didn't realize this until I was doing some research. This was like the 4th or 5th national championship game that Michigan has played in and lost all of them. Of course, as a Tar Heel fan, me personally, I remember back when the Fab Five was there, Chris Webber called that timeout. Didn't have it. National championship time for the Tar Heels that year. But Mo Wagner, the guy I mentioned earlier that was the leading scorer during the Loyola game, he's more than likely going to head to the NBA. Their other top scorer, Charles Matthews, could probably do the same. Even if he comes back, I think they're going to be okay. They actually have 11 guys on their squad that are either sophomores or freshmen. So somebody will step into that role. Plus, Jim Boeheim is a great coach. He's not on that same level as the guys we mentioned a few minutes ago, but he's still a solid coach and has a lot of experience. They play fundamental basketball. I don't know that they'll obviously make it to the national championship next year, but I could definitely see them, like you said, making it to the Sweet 16. I definitely can see them getting back into the tournament.
Yes.
Now, the reason I bring that up is Michigan is number 12 on ESPN's Way Too Early Top 25 for the 2018-2019 season. Now, of course, as soon as the season ends, they always do this. They did it with college football, and right now they still have Clemson being number 1. We'll get to that. We'll get to that as we get further into the summer. But just to read off some of the top teams here. As of right now, the group of writers that made this list, they have Kansas Jayhawks in the number 1 spot, which I can see that because they have a solid squad coming back. Bill Self always just retools. They don't necessarily have to break it down from scratch. Of course, the Duke Blue Devils are in the number 2 spot. They've got the number 1, number 2, and number 3 high school players coming on their team next year. So Duke's kind of taken over that persona of Kentucky as kind of being like the super freshman team. Would you guys agree?
I believe.
I think so.
Yeah, and they've also got the number 10 player coming in. So you're talking about 4 out of the top 10 high school players coming to Durham for next year. So I can see them being there. Villanova, right there, they've got them being number 3. Kentucky, number 4. And here's one that surprised me. They have the Auburn Tigers as being number 5 going into next year right now. Now, of course, this is before anybody leaves for the NBA or anybody transfers, that sort of thing. But just out of that,
Tennessee is in 8th as well, so it surprises me to see all these SEC teams that high up in the top 10.
that's what I was going to ask you. So after Auburn, we've got Gonzaga 6, Virginia Cavaliers 7, Tennessee Volunteers 8, Tar Heels check in at number 9, and then the Nevada Wolfpack at 10. So
Nevada.
what's your first instinct with that? Like, what jumps out to you?
I'm just surprised to see that a team like Auburn and Tennessee above someone like UNC in the top. I know it's way too early, but seeing the experts pick that and to set like that, it really shocks me to see SEC is moving up in the basketball world.
I agree. Anything stick out to you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm just truly surprised that by UNC, Chapel Hill is ranked number 9, which they should be in the top 5 because you're looking at Tennessee had a good successful year along with and Auburn. You don't hear too much from Auburn unless it's football.
Right.
But I think the narrative is depending on how the recruitment comes, how recruitment is doing, and who could come in, step up, and leadership, who's going to the NBA draft, who's going to stay in school. But I think it's way too early to predict any SEC school to be in the top 10.
Yeah, and I'm going to read some more of these off because one thing that surprised me was how many SEC teams were on this list. But just a couple of things that stuck out to me. You mentioned Carolina. I was kind of surprised that they were 9th. I thought maybe they'd be a little higher. Now, of course, we're losing Joel Berry and Theo Pinson to their seniors. But Luke May's coming back.
Cameron
Johnson more than likely will come back. At least I hope he does because I think he can make some improvements on his game.
Yeah.
And then we've also got a couple of big-time players coming in. Cody Jones is one of them. Nasir Little just won the MVP in the McDonald's All-American game. So that's something to look forward to. And Nevada being the 10 seed here. I didn't realize they have 3 guys that averaged over 14 points last year. So when you've got a big 3 like that, you can make some noise in the NCAA. Now, a couple other blue bloods that popped up here. Michigan State's number 11. Like I mentioned a second ago, Michigan Wolverines coming in at 12. West Virginia at 13. Florida Gators, another SEC team, although that's one you usually see that's pretty good in basketball. Syracuse coming in at 15. Virginia Tech, the Hokies, on there as 16. So we're starting to see some teams that you don't necessarily see in college basketball that are building their programs up, getting recruits, getting good coaches like Buzz Williams from the Virginia Tech Hokies. Because, the ACC is as tough as it is out there. And then finally here we've got Loyola Chicago at 17.
What?
Who saw that coming?
And they just made it to the Final Four.
They actually received 43 votes in the final AP Top 25 poll of this year. They had a top 30 defense and a 40% clip from beyond the arc. So that's nothing to mess with. I know they're a small school and don't get a lot of due, but still a good team nonetheless. Another ACC team at 18 with Clemson. Kansas State Wildcats, LSU Tigers rolling in at 20, and TCU, Butler, Florida State, Purdue, and then Oregon rounding out the top 25. So, again, a lot of SEC teams. What's going on? I mean, is the SEC just catching up to everybody?
It seems like it. I'm actually kind of surprised that Florida State's as low as they are as far as they went through the tournament. What was it, the Elite 8 they went to, and they beat Xavier as well. So, kind of surprised at how low they are. And then you got a team like Loyola College, who's way up there. I know they went to the Final Four, but it still surprised me to see that huge difference between those two teams.
Well, I mean, obviously, teams like Loyola are not going to get the same kind of recruits that Duke and Carolina and Kansas and Kentucky, teams like that do. But nonetheless, they're able to get recruits that fit their system, I think is what does the best for them. Same thing for Virginia. Of course, right now Virginia's got that stink on them from losing losing to the 16 seed. But again, Tony Bennett there is able to find guys that fit his system, that play defense, that shoot the three-point ball well. And Loyola, I think, is the same thing. LSU surprised me. LSU, the only time I hear about LSU basketball was when Ben Simmons was there a couple years ago, and they weren't good then either, and he was number 1 player in the country. So I'll be interested to see if they're a school that can pop up in the SEC and then nationally overall next year.
I'm also kind of surprised, too, the fact that Alabama is not within this talk with how well they actually done this year.
Right.
And there's teams that they've beaten that's been listed on this, like Florida. I believe they've beaten Auburn one game as well. It's surprising me how they're not getting any love from this top 25.
Well, I'll just say real quick, I think one reason why they're not on this list is Colin Sexton ain't sticking around.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to think he's going pro, right? Mm-hmm. This was supposed to be the year for Coach Avery Johnson where they had 2 or 3 top guys that were going to come in and have a good season for them. Sexton will be gone. There's a couple other Keandre can't remember the other guy's name. There's a couple other guys that may stick around, and maybe Avery Johnson can recruit well and build on top of that. But again, we'll have to wait and see. It's very, very early. I mean, the season just ended Monday.
Yes.
So hopefully, as we get closer and closer, when we see who goes pro and figure out who's graduating and who's transferring, we'll get a better idea of how next year's going to play out. We're going to take our first commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to get into some NFL. I got some questions for these guys, talking about the Browns, Kirk Cousins, who we think is going to be the top second-year breakout star in the National Football League. All that and more when we come right back from the RO Sports Show.
At Richmond Community College, we can prepare you for a high-skill, high-paying career in a variety of fields. From business to education, engineering, utilities, healthcare, criminal justice, information technology, and human services. At Richmond Community College, we can save you thousands of dollars on tuition through our university transfer programs that provide a seamless transition to universities and colleges throughout North Carolina. At Richmond Community College, we are always developing new courses and programs in response to the communities we serve. We offer day, evening, and online courses, and you can now complete 5 curriculum programs entirely online. At Richmond Community College, we believe in helping you prepare for a better life. Richmond Community College. Local college, big impact.
Exit Realty Platinum in Rockingham has listed one of the most beautiful homes in Richmond County. Located in Rockingham on Ledbetter Lake, the home features 4 bedrooms with bamboo floors and a kitchen featuring stainless steel appliances and granite countertops, and a master bedroom that overlooks Ledbetter Lake, along with a spacious tile shower and the attached master bathroom. The open living space leads to the back deck with a perfect view of Ledbetter Lake, and the property features its own boat dock. Want to see this beautiful home? Call Nicole Hayden with Exit Realty Platinum, your source for homes in Richmond and Moore counties.
My name is Jim Leach, and we have been using the Tim Hayden Construction Company for the last several years.
My name is Dave Owens and my wife Beth. We had some damage here at our place in Knollwood Village.
January 2nd, our house flooded upstairs coming through to the first floor.
Tim has responded very quickly with his team of people.
Our repairs went extremely well.
Tim made a very difficult situation much easier for us.
And welcome back to the RO Sports Show, brought to you by First Health Orthopedics. Now, as I mentioned before the break, guys, the NFL Draft is coming up April 27th, but you can pretty much talk NFL year-round. Of course, they're in the off-season. We spent the last couple of weeks talking about some of the moves that the teams have been making. Of course, the first week, everybody in the league, it seemed like, was making moves. One of those teams, of course, was the Cleveland Browns, who probably made the most moves. Although we'll get into that here in just a second. Now, my first question to you guys is, have the Browns done enough to contend for a playoff spot?
As of right now, on paper, they have, because with the acquisitions you made with Jarvis Landry, Tyron Taylor, Drew Staten, they just signed last week for a 2-year deal. And even when they, with Joe Thomas going home, and the defense pretty much improved as well, but I think Cleveland pretty much can contend for a playoff spot, but there's a few reasons, because you got to stay healthy. It's the number one thing. You got to improve on the draft, and you got to see what kind of guys you have, especially getting ready going to spring training, OTAs, mini camps, and then training camp coming, so on. But I think this might be the year Cleveland Browns might make a lot of noise in the AFC North. They might be the new Jacksonville Jaguars. You never know.
They very well could be. Now, of course, they went 0-16 last year, so even one win would be an improvement for them. But, you mentioned the North. You've got Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore there. Is there a spot for Cleveland in the playoffs?
Nah, not a chance, I'd say. And I'm not trying to make them look bad or whatever, but you got to have these – all it looks good on paper, but when they get on the field, are they going to be able to work together to do this, or are they going to be able to stay healthy, as you said? A lot of factors are going to come into that, and you got to get this team to work together. It might start off rough for them and might improve over the season, but I don't think it's going to be enough for them to contend for any playoff spots. Maybe give them 2 years.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. We saw something similar to this a few years ago when the Eagles brought on a bunch of big-time names. And, of course, they didn't do well under the Chip Kelly era. Now,
the Dream Team when they brought in
the Dream Team. Now, of course, they flipped all those people, and now you see they won a Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
I could see that very well happening in Cleveland, where they bring in all these big-time names. And again, like you said, on paper, they're a good team.
Yeah.
But you're in Cleveland, and I know I've mentioned this before. Does that rub off on these guys? Do you think that they get swept up in the fact that they never win? I mean, what do you think? Is that something that's in their heads?
I think that changes them into a motivation, saying, "Hey, we can turn this around. We're going to do this." If they keep that positive attitude, they can definitely turn it around. You can't go into a new team and be negative about it. You got to be positive.
Let me ask you this: you think that they've got a chance to make the playoffs? Do you think they have a chance to get in as a wild card, or do you think they could even win the North?
I could think they get in as a wild card. Look at the team. Like, you take a team like last year, like Buffalo Bills, first playoff appearance since '99, and that was big. That was a big thing for them. I can see Cleveland. They haven't been to the playoffs in probably almost.
I don't even know. Not since they came back in the league in '99. I don't think they've been to the playoffs.
Yeah, they've been to the playoffs, but I think it comes down to it's going to be a tough challenge, especially with the division you have, and it's very tough. And Cleveland pretty much be having a lot of easy schedules in the past couple of years, so we'll see how it all pans out. Staying healthy, have that positive attitude and the mentality, like Russell said. It's just the fact that if you come in Sunday after Sunday, try to contend and win games, I can see y'all play for a wild card spot. Division, no.
Yeah, and obviously we don't know how the season's going to shake out, but 8-8 might get you a wild card, or like Buffalo last year, 9-7 might get you in,
or 10-6.
I mean, there's a chance that maybe Cleveland could go 500. I don't know that they're going to have enough firepower to get there, but again, Cleveland, at least it seems like, is trying to do some things and make some moves and try to climb that ladder to being in contention every year.
And also they did boost up their offensive scheme because they hired former Pittsburgh Steelers offensive coordinator Todd Haley to run the offense.
Oh, really?
Yes, and the defense, which is most of y'all know, over the past couple of days in the 3-4, now they transition back to the 4-3.
Well, I can tell you what, if Haley's there, they're going to rip and run and let it go, aren't they?
Yeah.
Let it fly. Now, another question I wanted to ask you guys is, now obviously the Eagles won the Super Bowl this past year, but they had to beat the Pats to get there. I mean, let's face it, the Patriots are the hierarchy when it comes to the NFL, even though Tom Brady's getting up there, but
he's already up there.
Well, yeah. But he never seems to slow down. But
no.
How much, or just in general, or has the gap closed between the Patriots and the rest of the NFL at all, or what do you think?
I think there was a report when the Pats lost the Super Bowl, they said the window could be closing on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yes, and I had to disagree with this. If I was on ESPN, I had to disagree with you. I think the narrative is the window's never closed on New England. You had number 12 and Belichick there. Never go close. But I think the day they leave, yes. But I'm looking at every year, every season, you're always going to expect for New England at least be in contention for the Super Bowl or at least for the AFC title game. But opportunity, the gap to be there, no.
What do you think, Russell? I mean, are other teams in the NFL starting to slowly inch up and meet the Patriots, or maybe because Brady's getting older, are they starting to slip back down to everybody else?
I think it's kind of just getting back to a balance of great teams. Some teams are going to rise up, some teams are going to fall. And I think Patriots are still going to stay up there, but I think they're slowly falling just a little bit. But I don't think when you have a team like that, you expect them to always stay great, and when they lose a Super Bowl here and there, then you're saying they're doomed. But I don't think so. I think if they even make it to playoffs, they're still a successful team. I think every team that makes the playoffs is successful. So I don't think they're going to be in trouble. But if they want to keep that high caliber perspective on them, they need to get some new guys in, find somebody that can be a good replacement for Brady when he does want to retire, and keep that dynasty rolling. I would say they have a dynasty. So
yeah, and I agree with you, Jeremy. As long as Belichick and Brady are there, the window's always open. Now, here's the thing, though. Belichick could still keep coaching, but Brady can't play forever. I mean, the man's 40 years old, but still, you can't play quarterback in the NFL forever.
No, because I only remember two quarterbacks played over 40, and one of them was Brett Favre.
Yeah, and we see how his career kind of petered out there at the end.
And another one was he played George Blainer from the Oakland Raiders. He played till he was about 47, but I think I think the New England Patriots and their narrative is they got to find somebody who can replace Brady when he finally decides to hang up his cleats. And then in New England, a lot of people don't really realize they get a lot younger, and you want to get more speed on the defensive side of the ball. And you see most of your guys, they get under, like, pretty much, they don't get a first-round pick every year, but they can get guys who are valuable and where they could take a little small guy, like you take a guy named James White, a little small guy, a small frame guy who was drafted in the 6th round and look almost was Super Bowl MVP 2 years ago when they beat Atlanta.
Yeah. And, of course, another guy they drafted in the 6th round is Tom Brady himself. So
Yes.
You never know. And you're right. They're always making moves with the draft, and we're going to get into that here in just a minute. But talking about other top-tier quarterbacks, of course, Kirk Cousins signed with the Minnesota Vikings this year for just an exorbitant amount of money, and he's getting all of it. But even with that being said, even with Minnesota having the season that they did, even with Case Keenum under center, is Kirk Cousins going to be enough to keep the Vikings on top of the NFC North, especially with a healthy Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay?
Whew.
I don't know.
I don't know
think
that-
it'd be very difficult for Cousins to make that. I know he's a great quarterback, but I don't think he's going to be that caliber as high up as Rodgers. I think Packers is going to have a very good season coming up. I don't know about the Vikings, though.
Well, here's the thing. Green Bay, they let Jordy Nelson go,
And he signed with the Raiders.
but they picked up Jimmy Graham.
Yes.
And I expect Jimmy Graham to have a big season with Aaron Rodgers throwing to him. Aaron Rodgers makes everybody around him better. It's kind of like Peyton Manning was, where it doesn't really matter who your receivers are. He could throw to anybody and get you a 1,000-yard season. I think the difference between the two teams is Minnesota by far has a better defense. And I don't know if you guys agree with it, but I've always thought that defense wins championships.
Certainly.
Yes.
Now, I would say, obviously, that Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins.
He is.
And I would even say that, you know, Rodgers is on, and Brady are up there. They're like the top 2 quarterbacks in the league. I don't know if you guys agree with that. But I think it's going to be the defense for Minnesota that will allow them to stay on top in the division. Now, of course, I can see Green Bay getting in as a wild card, winning 10 games at least, and still being a wild card because Minnesota now, I still think, is upgrading a quarterback position, even though Case Keenum took them to the NFC Championship. But again, I think that was part of the defense. The run game, even with Dalvin Cook being gone. Of course, they get him back this year healthy as well. So we'll have to wait and see with that.
And certainly, you know, one player doesn't make or break a team.
Sure.
No.
Sure. Especially in football. You know, with 22 guys on the field, or 11 at a time, you know, it usually, unless you're the quarterback, it usually doesn't revolve around one player.
And then, and if even with Minnesota, because like if you look at the battle of the NFC North, everybody know for the longest time it's always been Minnesota and Green Bay. And then the moves that Green Bay made with Jimmy Graham, and then you got Devontae Adams on one end, Randall Cobb on one end. It's going to be the battle of the NFC North crown.
Yeah.
But like Russell said, really Minnesota really make a lot of moves. They just went out and got Kirk Cousins for a whole lot of money, but it's gonna be real interesting how this gonna pan out. Like both of them could contend for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I mean, you could see a scenario where both of them could win 11 or 12 games,
Yes.
and depending on the tiebreaker will depend on who gets the division
Yeah.
and who gets stuck in the wild card.
Yeah, because I always say then you also got Detroit and then Chicago. You can't count them out.
Right. Speaking of Chicago, that's a good segue. 'Cause I want to pose another question to you guys. There's a couple of quarterbacks that are going to be in their second years next year, and I want to get your guys' opinion. Who has the better chance at having a breakout season under center? Chicago Bears quarterback Mitch Trubisky or Kansas City Chiefs newly minted quarterback Patrick Mahomes? What do you think?
I'm going to go with Trubinsky.
All right.
I think I'll go with Trubisky as well because you're looking at Chicago, who just pretty much got rid of their head coach John Fox. I'm sorry, man. I know you've been with us in Carolina for a long time, but we look. He was pretty much thrust into the starting lineup because due to inconsistency of the quarterback's position, and he came in, had a few good games and whatnot have you, and he did enough to regain that starting position. By him Chicago made some moves in the offseason, bringing Allen Robinson in from Jacksonville, which that's going to give Trubisky at least a go-to guy, at least in red zone situations and third downs. And then you got Jordan Howard running the ball. The offensive line was pretty okay last year, so I can see Trubisky can improve on his game and pretty much have over 3,000 yards at the most. Patrick Mahomes, I think the narrative for Kansas City, I think what it was, Andy Reid he was under a lot of pressure last year, and I think he had to do something real fast to do what he needed to do to try to bring Patrick Mahomes in. But my thing is, I think you should have kept Alex Smith there in Kansas City, so Alex Smith could have trained, kind of mentored this guy and trained him where he needs to be. So now it's kind of like the Kansas City Chiefs gonna be in the losing situation.
Well, and Mahomes did have a year or two tutelage under Alex Smith, and I was going to say Trubisky just because he had a chance to play a lot more games and get a lot more game time experience. And I also have a theory that Big 12 quarterbacks don't do well in the NFL, of course, Mahomes being one of those from Texas Tech. But I'm going to say Mahomes simply because I think overall Kansas City has a better team. I think overall they have a better coach. I think that Andy Reid, no matter who the quarterback is always able to work some magic. And, I'll be honest, Patrick Mahomes can sling it. The guy's got a rocket for an arm.
Yeah, I seen one game when they were playing in the division game against San Diego Chargers where he threw this deep ball to Tyreek Hill. And I said, man, he probably got one of the best deep ball throwing beat dogs in the NFL.
Now, he also has, with that being said, he also has that gunslinger mentality, kind of like Brett Favre used to have, where there might be a spot the size of a football, and he's going to try to put it there. Now, sometimes he can and burn the guy's hands. Other times he might turn it over to the defense. You don't really know.
Yeah.
Of course, maybe he'll learn with age and with experience to, cut back on those kind of mistakes.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. But just right now, I could see Mahomes being the better of the two quarterbacks, which the way my predictions go, it means Trubisky's going to be an all-pro. So, also talking about the Patriots a minute ago about how they like to make some moves. They traded their, I guess you would call him the number one wide receiver, Brandon Cooks, to the Rams. The LA Rams getting stronger now for the 23rd overall pick. So that first round pick that they'll be picking up for Cooks. First of all, let me ask you this. Is this a good trade for, who's getting the better end of this deal?
I think the Rams is kind of the winners in this trade because you're looking at that's giving Jared Goff a go-to receiver to, throw to not only in the slot but also can go deep with him if so choose because you got Tavon Austin and pretty much there. And
Sammy Watkins still there.
Sammy Watkins and you got Todd Gurley running the ball. I think your offensive line just got a lot strong. Your offense has got a lot stronger.
Okay.
And then your defense, we don't need to talk about the defense.
Yeah.
Because I say the LA Rams look good on paper right now, and I think they can contend for a Super Bowl, but it's all boiled down to just got to stay healthy and have that positive attitude and have that mentality say, we need to go ahead and do this.
Now, what do you think, Russell? Is this better off for the Patriots getting a first-round pick, or is it better for the Rams to bolster their lineup once more?
I think it helps the Patriots more than the Rams because I know the Rams going to get a great quarterback, wide receiver, but how's that going to do with their players and their format and their style of play and all that? So I think the Patriots decided to get rid of Cook so they can have a little more spending money.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to win out when it comes to draft time.
Even if New England drafts a wide receiver, so that wide receiver will be successful because you're looking at under Brady.
That's what I was just getting ready to say. When I first saw this, it really didn't surprise me at all. If it did, it would just be because Cooks was only there for a season.
Yeah.
But in the long run, the Patriots are notorious for this. Moving draft picks, trading up, trading back is what they usually do, and acquiring 2 or 3 picks. Because they draft so well and they bring guys in that you've never heard of, like a James White, like a Rex Burkhead, and they have great seasons for him. I don't know what it is. I guess it's the Belichick effect, but I don't know. Now, this also poses another question. There's speculation that with the Patriots trading Cooks and all the stuff going on with Odell Beckham, what's the odds that the Pats maybe take a look at OBJ? Is there a chance he could end up in New England?
I think they got their eyes on him.
I believe they can because if the Giants already said in order to get ODB, or Odell Beckham Jr., you got to give up 2 first-round picks.
Yeah.
And I think New England will be willing to do that in order to get one of the top receivers in the game.
Here's the thing, though. Are the Giants going to want to take the 23rd pick, though? Because, obviously the Patriots would have to pair this one up with maybe a first-rounder in a couple years or whatever they want to do. You think that's enough to entice them to let go of their number one wide receiver?
I don't think so.
No.
So I don't think so either. But I do not blame the Patriots for at least kicking the tires on this. And, we've seen crazier things in this happen. There's a very good chance OBJ might end up in Boston. And wouldn't that be something? I think, at that point you'd probably have to make them one of the favorites. But speaking of that, you touched on it just a minute ago. Are the Rams the favorite now, at least in the NFC, if nothing else?
I think that, as far as the NFC West division, the Rams pretty much got it. They are shooing to win the division. But I think if you took from last year where the Rams, their success from last year, and when they went to the playoffs and everything, and I said, you know what, there was a couple of pieces in that game. The Rams could have beat, and they was in the division round, but forgot what that team they pretty much lost to. But all I said, if they had a couple more pieces in place and had another corner, Rams could have made a lot of noise in the playoffs and probably could have went deeper. But I think this year, with Talib, Marcus Peters, LaMarcus Joyner, Scott Shields, and then you just acquired Brandon Cooks, Jared Goff probably gonna have another All-Pro year.
Yeah.
And then your offensive line is pretty much solid. Defensive line, you pretty much got the best two defensive tackle in Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh. I think down the road, I think this is going to be the Rams' year to win it all.
Well, okay, so I tend to agree with you. I think the Rams, at least on paper, have the best team, at least in the NFC. But the Eagles are going to have something to say about it, right? As we just mentioned a minute ago, the Packers, the Vikings are probably going to have a say-so.
And Carolina.
Well, we'll see about that. But what do you think, Russell? I mean, are the Rams on the top of the heap when it comes to the NFC at least?
I don't think so. I think this will be a good year for them. I don't know. Actually, I think they might make the playoffs. They'll make the playoffs, but they'll get out in the first round. That's what I say.
Come on, man. Why I got to be in the first round? Why they can't go into the NFC? I'm making a prediction right now for the NFC title game for next year. Stay tuned. It's going to be LA Rams, and it's going to be versus Philly.
In the NFC Championship?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you can very well see that. Isn't that what we had? What was it? The Vikings, I guess, that beat the Rams. Actually, it might have been Philly.
Yeah.
Actually, it was Philly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I can see all those teams getting in again because right now it seems like the NFC at least is a little top heavy.
Yeah, it's getting a lot stronger too.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think you can make a case now. For the longest time, the AFC seemed to be
the dominant
better of two, and I think now it's completely flipped on its head because the Steelers, Big Ben's getting older. You've got some other teams that in the past have Baltimore. They don't seem to be getting any better.
And you take a lot of the former Super Bowls who had won Super Bowls in the past, 10 years with Denver and all of them.
Right.
And like I could say, like we said about windows are closing, I think a lot of those teams windows are closing, especially with Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and pretty much Denver. As I say, if Denver don't get Denver, I can see Denver get one more, especially under the Case Keenum era, but then at the same time, but the NFC is getting a lot stronger, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So you really don't know when it's time to come playoff time. You don't know who's going to be the top dog.
Right. And again, I mean, we'll have to keep track, see if OBJ ends up in Foxborough. Of course, if that happens between now and next week, we will definitely talk about that when we come back a week from now. Speaking of coming back, we're going to take another commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to do kind of another quick take segment where we talk about a bunch of different things, including NASCAR. The NBA Hall of Fame has chosen their people. Of course, the Masters are starting up today. It's actually already started, so we're going to get into all that and more when we come right back from the RO Sports Show.
McNair Auto Sales is the place to buy your pre-owned car, truck, or van. To be the best, it takes big selection, friendly staff, and great pricing. We guarantee a no-hassle buying experience, and financing is available right on site. So come see us today. We're located at 1026 East Broad Avenue in Rockingham. And remember, with over 40 years of experience, you know McNair is the name you can trust.
Family Pharmacy is a local pharmacy that's been in business in Rockingham for over 10 years. Located in the Food Lion Shopping Center on US 1 North, we have easy access into the store and a drive-thru for your convenience as well. You can download the official Family Pharmacy app at myfamilypharmacy.com, and we'll help you set it up to text you when your prescription is ready, and you can even set it up to fill your prescriptions when due. Our motto is we'll treat you like family, and it's something we truly mean. We take the same care in filling your prescription that we would take for our own family. Family Pharmacy, we'll treat you like family.
And welcome back to the RO Sports Show, brought to you by First Health Orthopedics. Now, as we did last week, guys, since there's a lot of sports events going on, a lot of things happening in the sports world, I thought we'd just do a bunch of quick takes on a lot of different things that are going on. Now, to start off, NASCAR actually took a week off this past week. Is that for like Easter break?
Yeah,
kind
they
of
get
thing?
an Easter break off, and they have another one coming up later, and I think it's in the summertime, but they get 2 weeks off out of 36 weeks, I think.
Hey, I think that's fair. Everybody needs a week off from no matter what your job is. Now, since they had a week off, where are they headed to this week?
We got Texas Motor Speedway coming up. They're going to be down in Fort Worth, Texas, to race on the 1 Mile House track. Not sure who won it last year, but I know a lot of great names have won that race. Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, a lot of big names there. Kyle Busch is one of them too. So should be a good race for everybody. Of course, they also give out their trophies, actually a pair of 6-shooters and a cowboy hat as part of the trophies. So great, awesome prize for them and whoever wins that.
Everything's bigger in Texas,
Yep.
right? Now, you mentioned that right after that, though, there's another big race coming up. Talk to us about that one.
We got the Bristol Day race coming up too. That'll be 2 weeks from now. So it's a short track. Everybody loves short tracks. If you're a NASCAR fan, of course, there's of course not the old Bristol track. Everybody talk about the old track, but this is the concrete one. So the racing's different from way back when, but it's still a lot of great racing there. Of course, if it was a night race, they have another cool trophy for that one too, which is actually a sword.
Like a Game of Thrones sword.
It's like it's a medieval sword, yeah.
I wonder how that even started in Tennessee, of all places. I would have thought maybe they'd give them a bottle of whiskey or something. So actually, I think I asked you this last week, but does every course give out an award like that?
It depends on the track. A lot of with the ones who are owned by Speedway Motorsports, they do that a lot with their tracks. Of course, Martinsville gives out a grandfather of the clock. That's been a tradition forever. I think the ones that you see from Texas and Bristol are kind of new, trying to change it up a little bit to make it fresh for the drivers and the fans. Of course, Daytona has the traditional trophy they got down there as well. So it just depends on what the track does.
Does Charlotte Motor give out something like that?
I don't think so, but of course they do have the All-Star race, which
Right,
they
that's
can win $1
true.
million for that one.
I'd rather have $1 million personally.
That part.
Get your own custom trophy.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
no,
exactly.
A few years ago, Watkins Glen was getting ready to repave their track and set it up for next year. And Joe Logano had won that race, and he got to drive one of the machines to put the first hole into it right after the race. So
that's
that was,
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
He's
course.
won a lot of the cool trophies.
Of course, if you won $1 million, you could buy your own 6-shooter, your own grandfather clock. You know, you could buy all that stuff. Now, did Rockingham ever do anything like that, or they just gave out a trophy?
Of course, if you go down to the racetrack, in front of it, we got the big giant. Well, there's 2 rocks down there now, and they got names etched into them. So past winners, it doesn't have to be from the Cup Series. Joe Logano has his name on it, and he raced in the ARCA Series and won that. Chase Elliott, I believe, has his name on it as well. Casey Kane does, and he won a truck race out there with that. So there's a lot of great names on there. You got Earnhardt, Gordon, Stewart, a lot of the big names, and a lot of names you don't know but are actually now in the Cup Series. So I think that's really cool that we've got that history here.
Yeah, a lot of those guys were the young guns at that point.
Yeah.
Now, talking about Texas Motor, who you got winning?
I've been debating on this one between Harvick, Truex, Kyle Busch, Joe Logano, and Brett Keselowski. Those are kind of my top 4 for this season, but I think I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick to ride off into the sunset with this one.
And that would be how many for him already this
That'll be
year?
his 4th one if he wins it.
I mean, that's talking about dynasties. I mean, that's not necessarily a dynasty, but that's at least jumping out big in the first half of the season, right?
3 out of, I think, 4 or 5 races
Yeah.
now they've had this season is pretty good.
That's pretty strong. That's pretty strong. Speaking of pretty strong, the NBA has announced their Hall of Fame guys that are getting voted in. I know we had talked about this and mentioned some of the guys that were eligible for it. The 3 guys that most people know that are getting in for next year, Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, and Ray Allen. So 3 guards who had phenomenal careers. Just real quick, a couple guys that when we talked about this first, I mentioned they probably wouldn't get in because, in my opinion, they had better college careers than NBA careers. I'm talking about Chris Webber and Grant Hill. Do you think they made the right call, or do you think those 2 guys should have got in?
I think, well, you take Grant Hill with him and Christian Laettner back in the 90s with Duke and whatnot have you, and when he got to the NBA, played with the Detroit Pistons, he was pretty much one of your best top 5 forwards in the game. Then pretty much after he got traded to the Orlando Magic, I think injuries started derailing his career, and I think that hurted his chances down the road. And you take Chris Webber, a guy who pretty much part of the Fab Five from the University of Michigan, and then his best years came when he was in Sacramento. And I think, like you said, injuries derailed their careers, and I think by then they have the numbers in the NBA, but they were well known for what they done. I think that hurted them, but when it's all said and done, I see both of them might get to the NBA Hall of Fame.
Yeah, eventually they could. Sure.
Yeah.
What do you think, Russell? Think they got it right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm actually kind of not a big basketball fan, but when I see names like Steve Nash, Ray Allen, Grant Hill, I actually recognize those names at some point. So I think when a non-basketball fan does recognize them, I think they kind of deserve to be in that Hall of Fame situation there.
I think that obviously injuries derailed Grant Hill's career,
And Chris Webber's.
but I think it's a testament to him, the fact that he's even in the discussion after having all those injuries during his career. Now, I think what's kept Chris Webber out is injuries, but it's also the Lakers, because he could never, ever get over that hump of winning a championship.
Yeah, when they were playing in Sacramento, when you had Mike Bibby, Doug Christie, David Stojakovic.
I mean, they had great teams, but they could never get over Kobe and Shaq or whoever was playing with Kobe, and I think that's eventually what hurt them, at least in this year. But again, I could see both of them eventually getting in as well.
And with Steve Nash and Jason Kidd, Ray Allen, 3 top guards in my generation, pretty much.
Right.
I remember.
That's how we know we're getting old too, by the way, when the guys that we used to watch are going into the Hall of Fame.
Because I don't remember too much about Steve Nash when he was playing for Dallas, but I do remember him playing in Phoenix when you had Stoudemire and then you had Barbosa and all of that. They just couldn't. They had pretty much a solid team in Phoenix, but over the course of time, one team they couldn't get over.
Yeah.
They couldn't get over the San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah.
We pretty much dominated.
That was kind of their Achilles heel. The difference between Nash and somebody like Webber, though, is Nash has 2 MVPs under his belt.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the big differences. Of course, Ray Allen has a couple of championships.
Yeah, with Boston and Miami.
Right. And then, of course, Jason Kidd you can make a case he's one of the best point guards of all time.
And then he got his ring in Dallas, and then, once he retired, did well with Brooklyn Nets, and then did well with Milwaukee.
Don't say now. Did they win one with the Nets, or I know they went to a championship?
They went to 2. I'm gonna tell you, this is the history of New Jersey, not Brooklyn.
Right.
During the time when Jason Kidd was playing for New Jersey, they went to the Eastern Conference Finals twice, and went to the NBA Finals, played against the Lakers, but you know how that panned out.
Right.
You couldn't beat Kobe Shaq during that time.
It seems to be a running theme here. For a lot of these players, they've run into some teams that have given them trouble.
That just like with Utah with Karl Malone and John Stockton in the 90s. They just couldn't beat Chicago.
Right. Well, there was a lot of teams that couldn't beat Chicago, though.
Even with Seattle with Gary Payton and Sean Kemp. So, hey.
Yeah, exactly. Now, keeping in basketball here, I know last week we talked about there were some injuries to some big-time players and how that might affect them moving forward into the playoffs. I know one that we mentioned was John Wall. He's actually come back. He actually came back against the Hornets a couple nights ago. Had a really good game, and they ended up beating the Hornets. But another big-time player that's had an injury here recently is Joel Embiid from the 76ers in Philadelphia. This guy actually had a fractured orbital bone in his left eye and also had a concussion. That sounds awful. He actually had surgery on it. Now they're trying to figure out, what kind of timeline this guy's going to have, whether he's going to be able to come back in just a couple weeks, or is he going to miss the first round of the playoffs? Is this even going to matter? What do you think?
I think it's going to hurt Philly's chances of moving forward deeper in the playoffs, because really, if you look at Joel Embiid, he's pretty much the heart and soul of the Philadelphia 76ers. And you're looking at Ben Simmons, who pretty much he going to do what he do, but when you have a superstar in Joel Embiid at center who can give you 20-10 a night, but I think the narrative is whoever they play in the first round, and I think as playing the first round, if other guys don't step up their game and do what they need to do, I can see Philly get eliminated.
Oh, you think they could get knocked out?
Yeah.
All right, what do you think, Russell? I mean, is this going to matter when it comes playoff time?
No, I don't think it'll matter too much. I think it'll be all right.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I also agree with you, though. It's going to depend on who they get matched up with. And even right now, there's still just a handful of games left in the season, but there's so small amount of games in between, like 4th place and 8th place. They may end up 4th, they may end up 6th or 7th. You don't really know until the final game is done with. It's just going to me, it's kind of a wait-and-see approach. If he only misses a couple weeks, and it won't matter. I think Ben Simmons is good enough to carry them if they end up playing a lower seed team in the first round. But again, the fear with Joel Embiid and the 76ers in general is they just couldn't stay healthy.
Yes.
And I think it was just a miracle that Embiid lasted this long.
Yeah.
Because this was like we thought it was going to be the first full season that he was able to play. Now, obviously, this injury was not his fault. So we'll have to wait and see again.
Yeah.
But again, 76ers, hopefully they'll be able to pick up LeBron next year, and none of this will matter. Now, the reason I bring that up is this past week on Friday against the New Orleans Pelicans, LeBron James actually passed Michael Jordan for double-digit scoring games in a row with 867. Of course, Jordan had 866. Now, I know I bring this up all the time, and you guys probably think differently than I do, but is LeBron finally getting up there to where he's better than Jordan?
I'm looking at nobody gonna be better than Jordan, but I can truly say with LeBron's defense, I say LeBron's getting up there is pretty much drawing comparisons, but I think he's getting to that elite / legend status. And pretty much if this guy retired, if LeBron retired right now, he's already a Hall of Fame first ballot.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And but I think he's wanting more. I think LeBron's pushing himself, motivating himself for more. And I think what he really wants to do at the age of 32, I think he really wants to be the top scorer in the NBA. He wants to pass his mentor.
If he keeps going like he is, he's going to break even more records than this.
Yeah.
Russell, what do you think? Is it close at least, or is the GOAT still MJ?
I don't think either one should be compared to each other, considering which era they play in. LeBron plays in this generation. Michael Jordan played back in the day. You see this a lot. A lot of greats get compared to the new guys who are getting that great too. I think they're great in their own right and not better than the other. I mean, you can compare stats all day, but you got to think about who LeBron has played against in his time, Michael Jordan, who he played in his time, and just if you had them face off against each other in their prime, then that would be determined who was the greatest.
Yeah, and I just want to bring up something that I saw that Clyde Drexler said about LeBron. He said, I played against Michael, and he was phenomenal. LeBron James made it to the finals with a couple of guys we can't even remember. Michael had Hall of Famers playing with him. Think about that. So I think there's a case to be made that, LeBron has done more with less as far as talent that's been around him. But again, I think we'll have to wait until LeBron is done. I mean, he's in his 15th season, but it seems like he's getting better, right? I mean, does that mean he's scoring more? He's getting more rebounds, assisting more?
Yeah, and see, think about when he first came on the league, he was like I think he could carry on his shoulders. But as now he getting a lot older, and pretty much he really lost his beat. I think he wants to he won't contend for a championship, but I think he wants to elevate his stats up a little bit to pretty much be recognized, or at least be taught for years to come, being one of the best top five guys in the game of all time.
Now, Russell, I know you said that it's not necessarily fair to compare them because they played in two different eras, and I get that standpoint. But by the time LeBron's done, let's say LeBron plays another 5 years at he's obviously not going to be able to play at the level that he is right now, but even 5 years from now when he retires, I mean, wins another couple more championships, what do you say then?
Yeah, I still say he's still great, but I mean, again, he never has even faced off with Michael Jordan. So, I mean, of course you can compare stats all day, but I still don't think that you should compare one to the other. It's just like another sport. So for my example, Jimmy Johnson gets compared all the time to Dale Earnhardt in NASCAR. But they never raced each other. They raced in different eras. They had different ways of things that were done then and then now. So I just don't see how you can compare people who's not done the same thing under different circumstances.
True. And I think you could definitely say that in baseball, where I brought that point up too, where there's different eras. I don't necessarily know who the best baseball player is of all time. Of course, people say Babe Ruth, but you can make a case for several other players.
Oh yeah.
I just think I think when it's all come down to it, it's going to be Michael Jordan and LeBron James, like a 1A, 1B, in my opinion, as to the greatest basketball players of all time. At least until the next LeBron James or Michael Jordan comes around, or Kobe Bryant.
When we have little kids or something, we can make that.
It could be LeBron's son, because I hear he's a little baller right now.
LeBron Jr.
Yeah, LeBron Jr. Now, moving on, our last thing, of course, the Masters started today. Now, I do want to let people know, and I forgot to bring this up earlier, but you may have noticed we had some pictures up for some friends of mine who were down in San Antonio for the Final Four, and were nice enough to send me some photos. Of course, we put those up for you. We've also got some photos from the Masters. Yes, that's right. The RO Sports Show is everywhere. So, down in Augusta, they're starting today. Of course, this is one of the 4 big majors for the PGA.
I think it's the big one.
Yeah, I mean it is. Well, you could say that because the other 3 majors move. Augusta's the only one that stays in Augusta. I'll just say real quick, Sergio won this last year, and Sergio at that point was like the best golfer who had yet to win a major championship. Of course, now he's got a green jacket, and unless he wins again, we'll hand that green jacket over to somebody else this year. Now, just to ask you guys real quick, who you got winning the Masters?
I've been tossing between Jordan Spieth, who's actually won it before, and Rory McIlroy, but I think I might go with Rory on this one just because of the experience, but I'm not counting Jordan now.
You know, Rory actually hasn't won a Masters yet, which I found surprising
Yeah.
because, you know, he's been kind of the man here for this young movement of guys coming up. Jeremy, who you got?
I'm going with the legend in his own right. It's Tiger.
Going Tiger Woods, y'all.
Yeah, I got to go with the Tiger Woods.
I'm going to go with his contemporary for the last 10 or 15 years. I'm going to take Phil Mickelson. Augusta's not necessarily one of those courses where you got to be able to drive at 350, 400 yards. It's real tight. The greens are really fast. It's a lot of hidden bunkers, a lot of up and down shots. Lefty's really good when it comes to those. He's also been putting very well so far this season. And I will just say this, Jack Nicklaus right now is the oldest to win the Masters at age 46. Phil Mickelson is 47. So not only do I have him winning, but I've got him breaking the record for oldest player to win the Masters. So.
You know, my favorite thing about this Masters, though, is that we have a lot of big names in it, and Tiger's back in it.
Yeah.
And he's able to play just as good as he's ever been able to. And that's going to be really cool. And I like seeing – golf is one of my favorite sports to watch. I know a lot of people don't like watching it, but I do because you get to see individuals play. It's not just a team sport. It's all about that individual, how they play on the greens, on the fairways, on the drive. Everything matters, and it all goes to that one person, their mentality, and how they can handle that pressure.
I agree.
Masters is the battleground and the test for all of that.
I agree. I think PGA, just golf in general, is real hyped up right now with the Masters starting. Like you said, Tiger's back and playing great. On Tuesday, Tiger and Phil played together in a practice round, and I don't know if you saw it, but you should have seen the crowds. I mean, there was a practice round, and none of it counted, but you would have thought it was Sunday, and Tiger was in red, and Phil was battling him, in a playoff hole, which is good, because I'm like you. I think if Tiger's there, obviously it's good for golf, it's good for the sport, but even still, I think right now it's just a good time to be involved in the PGA. So that's going to do it for the quick takes. When we come back from the RO Sports Show, we're going to do our big impacts of the week, and of course, love it or hate it. We'll do all that when we come right back after this.
Willow Tree Antiques and Gifts is all about rustic home decor and gifts. You will always find a variety of unique antiques, vintage, and new items in our shop. Come and see our selection of housewarming, new baby, and wedding gifts. For the man in your life, we have many collectibles, Boker knives, and leather. And ladies love the jewelry, purses, candles, hats, and t-shirts. We also offer a 30-day layaway program. Come and experience shopping at Willow Tree Antiques and Gifts.
With hospice, you guys just outdo yourselves every day. And I really appreciate it. I honest to God don't know what I would do if it weren't for you. The things that you do, I'm in approval of. And thank you. I don't know what else to say other than thank you.
Rockingham Farm Supply, at the corner of Highway 220 and Green Street in Rockingham, will have their annual Customer Appreciation Day, March 23rd and 24th. Some great food and great company. Come on down. Check out the Bobcats. They are an authorized dealer for Bobcat zero-turn mowers. They have seed, chicks, chain, key making, a little bit of everything that you could use for your farm or your home. So come on down, enjoy some food, some fellowship, and just maybe you might get to meet Matthew and Mark. Maybe they'll give you a ride on one of the Bobcat zero turns.
Welcome back to the RO Sports Show, brought to you by First Health Orthopedics. Now, as we like to do every week, we're going to get right into our big impacts of the week. Of course, those are brought to you by Richmond Community College, whose motto is Local College, Big Impacts. Let's start with you, Russell. Who's your big impact this week?
I've got Grayson Wade from the Richmond Raiders softball team. She surpassed fellow SAC pitcher Ina Womack from Hope County as the number one for a strikeout pitcher in the state.
Wow, that's big.
Yeah.
And just goes to show you how great the Lady Raiders softball team is this year. Jeremy, who you got for your big impact?
I just want to say congratulations to Jonathan Lee from the Richmond Raiders baseball team, who threw a perfect game, 11 strikeouts, and a perfect game for the against Hope County. Real good. I'm like, you throw a perfect game, 11 strikeouts. That's very impressive.
Yeah, he pitched the whole game. He only threw like 73 pitches, which is just out of this world. And I was fortunate to get there after we did the show and catch a little bit of that. And you don't see a perfect game very often, even at the high school level. So, of course, kudos to both of those Raider players. My big impact of the week is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish women's team, who won the national championship from that side of the bracket. Of course, everybody figured UConn was going to be the team that won it all, as they usually do. But Notre Dame beat UConn 91-89 in overtime this past Friday, and then this past Sunday beat Mississippi State 61-58 to give the Fighting Irish a national championship.
Mississippi State up in there. Does the SEC usually do good with women's basketball?
Yeah, sometimes. Mississippi State's one of those. Tennessee, of course, with Pat Summitt was there, was as good as UConn for many, many years. But yeah, so that's our big impacts for this week. Now, of course, like we always like to do every week as well, is our Love It or Hate It, and we're going to start with baseball. There was a game this weekend. Of course, baseball just started, but against the Baltimore Orioles against the Minnesota Twins. Now, at this point, the Twins pitchers hadn't given up a hit. It's the ninth inning. There is a guy by the name of Chance Sisco who came up for the Orioles. Now, for those of you that follow baseball, you know what I'm talking about here. There's a lot of shifting going on, especially in the infield, where if a guy is right-handed and pulls it left, they'll shift the whole infield to the other side. Same thing if it's a left-hander, they'll shift the whole infield to the right side of the field. Well, this guy is a right-hander and a left-hander, and bunted it to the left side where there was no one over there. Of course, this broke up the no-hitter. The Twins did not like it because they said that's one of the unwritten rules of baseball that you shouldn't break. What do you think? Love it or hate it?
I'm going to say love it on the fact that they broke an unwritten rule, because I don't like these unwritten rules. If they're not written down, they're not in stone or on paper, then it's not a rule, in my opinion.
Okay.
So having that breaking it up, I think that's fine with me. I'll go with it.
What do you think?
I love it, but just like Russell said, if no written documentation is not in place or nothing like that, then
the Twins can get over it.
Yeah, they can get over it.
Here's my thing. I've been saying that ever since they started doing these shifts, that people should do this exact thing and just bunt to where no one is. But I'm going to say hate it because I'm an old school baseball fan, and I firmly believe in those unwritten rules, even though there are way too many of them, especially in baseball. But again, just because I'm an old school player, I think that go up there and try to get a hit the old-fashioned way. Go up there swinging instead of bunting. Of course, baseball is completely different now. They don't care what I say. But I'm going to say hate it on that one. Now, moving on, and talking about college basketball again, ECU has had some trouble here the last few years. It seems like in every sport. But basketball has been down for the last couple of years. But they're going to bring back Joe Dooley as the head basketball coach for ECU. Jeremy, love it or hate it?
I love it. It's good for the school, and then bring a former coach back to redeem his career.
All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I love it. I think with the fact that bringing some coaches back that the fans have loved, they want to get away from this Comfort era, if you will. So they want to bring back, a lot of fans love the previous head coach for ECU for football. I can't remember his name right now, Ruffin McNeil. But basketball, I think it'll be a good idea to bring back some guys too that they know and fans can get around. So I think I'm gonna say love it on this one.
I'm gonna say hate it just because you mentioned the Comfort era. This guy's part of that, right?
Well, no. He play somewhere else and then he came back to ECU. I'm not sure where he left at.
Okay, so I get what you're saying, but I'm still going to say hate it just because ECU, I think, is a big enough school. They're in North Carolina. They need to go after a big-time name coach. Now, I know the coach before this was a former Tar Heel, so this guy's replacing him, which is enough for me to say hate it. But, again, ECU, I think that they're a big enough school to where they can have big-time programs in football, in basketball. They're usually pretty good in baseball. And I agree with you on that. They need to move out from this comfort umbrella that a lot of these coaches were under, and just start from scratch, right?
And I think they could build it up with their football program because a lot of their fans are primarily football fans.
That's where you start if you're Pirate Nation. So now, again, talking about college basketball, and we did the way too early top 25 earlier, but as of right now, Vegas has the Duke Blue Devils as a 5-1 favorite to win the tournament next year. Jeremy, love it or hate it?
I hate it because I hate the Blue Devils. Because I think the narrative is you got other teams that can pretty much can do better than Duke for next year, and you never know. Villanova, Chapel Hill, whatever case may be, they might do better than Duke. So I really hate it because you just don't put a darn prediction on that early.
All right.
I guess I'm going to say hate it just because I'm not a fan of way too early polls. Usually my teams are never up in the top spot like they should be. I'm talking about the college football playoffs. I'm going to say hate it.
I'm going to say love it, and I'm going to put my love for the Tar Heels aside for just a moment. The reason that Vegas...
You traitor.
The reason that Vegas... Well, yeah, we have to be objective here. The reason I think that Vegas put this on them is because the stuff I mentioned earlier. First of all, Coach K is there. Top of that, you've got 3 of the top 10 freshmen coming in that's going to play for the Blue Devils next year. That alone, I think, is a legitimate enough reason to make them the favorite moving in. Of course, Vegas probably had them the same thing this last year, maybe the year before that, and of course they didn't win it that year. So I think at this point it's irrelevant, but I can say I love it just because I get where where Vegas odds makers are coming from. Now, also talking about NCAA and NBA, there is a report that's come out that Villanova head coach Jay Wright may stay in the same city but go pro and become the Philadelphia 76ers head coach and replace Brett Brown. What do you think? Love it or hate it?
Ooh, okay. I would pretty much hate it because my thing is you just won a national championship. You're well loved by the fans, and and I'm pretty sure the people love you. But why would jump from the college? Why leave the college rank and go to the NBA?
All right.
I'm gonna say love it because if he's staying in the same city, those fans can follow with him and help build up the 76ers to a better team themselves because they're going to have their fans pouring in from Villanova to over there. I'm sure Villanova fans probably aren't that big of 76er fans, but with a former Villanova player going there and pretty much saying that he loves this area and he wants to stay in this community and build it up, I think fans can get around that quite well.
I'm going to say hate it just because I don't think Jay Wright should leave Villanova. I think that if he wants to go down as one of the greatest coaches, he needs to stick it out and stay there because he's got a good thing going.
Yeah, especially at Villanova.
And we've seen, I mentioned one of the last quote-unquote dynasties was Florida back, 10 or 11 years ago. Billy Donovan did the same thing, left for the NBA. And, of course, he's had an okay career in the NBA, but not nearly as good as he was at Florida.
Because I remember matter of fact, just speaking on that, when Coach Donovan won the national championship with Florida the second time, and I remember he had an offer to go to Oklahoma City Thunder to be the coach, and it was like he pulled one of those Josh McDaniel moves.
Yeah,
and he pretty much he accepted the job, then he turned it down. And now I believe he's down in Orlando, I believe.
He is in Orlando. He ended up going to OKC eventually.
Yeah.
But now he's in Orlando, and, of course, Orlando's
not doing too high. So that's why I think this is my old saying goes, don't ever quit your day job in the college ranks. You should stay where you was at.
Well, there's been plenty of cases where college coaches have gone to the NBA. Larry Brown just comes to mind and been successful. But somebody that's on the stage on the level that Jay Wright is, I think he should just stay put where he's at. But so I would say hate it from that perspective. Now, finally, our last love it or hate it, again, talking about the NBA. The NBA is contemplating starting an international camp. Now, we've seen some players, especially high school players, and instead of going to college for 1 year, they decided to go overseas and play. For one, because they get paid for it, which they don't in college. Technically they don't get paid. Now the NBA wants to take advantage of that and start up their own international camp out there. So these guys can go and play overseas if they want to, come back whenever they want to, maybe sign with an NBA team. What do you think? Love it or hate it?
I love it because that gives the high school, the prospects more experience and more time to develop their game. So when the time is right, when like a team like I'm just kind of a Spurs fan. Like, hey, this is General Manager R.C. Buford from the San Antonio Spurs. We'd like for you to come to our camp and sign a 10-day contract with us.
Right.
So that's getting them more prepared and more, and motivation for them to elevate their game. And you never know, you might be on the team for the rest of the season.
Very well could.
Yeah, I'm gonna say love it myself because these guys who are playing overseas, they're probably never going to get known. And with being able to be under an umbrella for NBA and actually be able to have that name on it, they have something to be proud of with that. They can say, hey, I'm working with the NBA. And then, of course, like you said, Jeremy, where one of them might get a call from somebody, from a team, and then come out and try out over there, and then they might actually make the team and be somebody big. We might have another LeBron James somewhere out there in another country that could come over here and be huge.
Yeah, because you look at the history of I'll give you one prime example. Now, for Houston Rockets, y'all know Yao Ming, who was coming from overseas. We didn't know who this dude was, but all I know, we saw a 7'6" dude and can pretty much give you 20 tonight. And look how he turned out, Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer. The first thing I thought of was, I don't know if you guys remember, but a few weeks ago we did a Love It or Hate It about Steve Kerr talking about guys that weren't drafted to be able to go back to school if they chose to. And of course that hasn't been implemented yet. I could see a scenario where if a guy tries to get drafted and doesn't, he can go and join this camp overseas and develop his game, get more experience that way, like you guys said. So I'm going to say love it as well for that one. So that's going to do it for this edition of the RO Sports Show. Now, I do want to mention, coming up this Saturday at 5:30 p.m., we are going to do a WrestleMania special. We're going to be going through all of the matches that are going to be taking place Sunday night in New Orleans and making some predictions, talking about who we think might show up. And just going to be a crazy night, and I look very much forward to it, so we hope you'll tune in to that.
As Jim Ross will say, this show is going to be a slobber knocker.
There you go. I may get hit with a metal chair. We'll see what happens. But again, we appreciate everyone for watching. Of course, again, make sure to tune in to that on Saturday. And of course, make sure to tune in right here again next Thursday at 5:30. You can watch us on the RO YouTube page, RO's Facebook page, RichmondObserver.com. You can listen to us on The Classic Rock. Of course, you can also listen to the WrestleMania special at 5:30 on the Classic Rock as well. So for Jeremy Russell, I'm Matt Harrelson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you right here next week.